Over the last 2 years, I've been meticulously studying Andrew Tate's podcast, interviews, and course content to find out what makes him so influential, so articulate, and so compendious so that when he speaks, people gravitate towards him and pay attention. I've got 8 things written down here, and I promise I saved the best for last, so get your notepad out because this will change the way you speak forever so that when you speak, people not only listen, but they are attracted towards you. Number 1, Tate's lexicon. Lexicon just means your vocabulary that you have is absolutely astronomical. The amount of words that he can just grab out of thin air and use in any given context is out of this world. A lot of people have heard him say words like perspicacious and compendious and realms and all of these fancy words that none of us knew what they even meant before we heard him say it. And that is an example of Tate's very diverse and complex lexicon. And lexicon just means your own personal vocabulary. And so the first point is the amount of words that Andrew Tate knows that he can just use at any given moment is far beyond the scope of majority average English-speaking individuals. That is the first thing that makes him stand out and makes people listen to him, is because when he speaks, his words carry weight because he's not just saying the same words everyone else says. So in order for you to increase your lexicon, there's surface level, there's surface lexicon, and deep lexicon. We're going to talk about surface lexicon, which is the words that you use on a day-to-day basis. You need to not only expose yourself to new information, or rather said, new words, whether that be via watching Tate's podcast or other people or interviews or reading books or going through a dictionary, etc., but also using those words more often to the point where they are subconsciously ingrained in your head so that when somebody asks a question, you don't have to sit there and think for a minute about what is that cool word. You can just instantly say it because it is a word that you have used so often. That is number 1. Number 2 is the speed or the cadence at which Tate speaks at. If you notice when he speaks, he actually speaks quite fast. As a matter of fact, he speaks faster than most people, which is interesting because typically speaking, when people say, oh, you know how to become a more confident speaker, they say slow down, which is true because when you slow down, your words carry more weight. However, when you slow down too much, people get the sign that you aren't confident. You have to think a lot before you speak, which implies weakness. Tate doesn't do that. He speaks really fast, but not too fast to the point where you can't understand, but fast enough that you think, wow, he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't sit here and stutter and and ah, all this. He speaks quickly, which means that he knows his shit, which is why people pay attention and are attracted or right towards him and want to listen because, like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. This guy's words actually carry weight. He's not just saying words for the sake of saying words. The words he say carry meaning, and that makes you want to listen. The third thing is Tate's vocal range. If you listen to Tate speak, he doesn't just speak in the same monologue tonality the entire time. His vocal range is very diverse. Sometimes he'll speak in a very high pitch to illustrate a certain point, sometimes in a very low pitch. Sometimes he will speed up, sometimes he will slow down. And he does all of these very intentionally to make you want to listen, to make you interested in what he has to say. Right? If he just talked in the same cadence, the same tonality, everything the whole time, it wouldn't be interesting. But his very diverse dynamic range that he uses so much, especially when he tells stories, it encapsulates it captures the audience's attention to the point where they're like, wow. They're almost attracted to him in the sense of like, wow, this is so cool the way this guy speaks. Because it's very different than most people. And that is due to the fact that he has so many different sort of ways that he can project what he's saying. Which I'll add on to that, he also projects his voice a lot. He doesn't just sit here and, yeah, I think the Matrix is coming for us. If he spoke like that, nobody would even believe him. If people didn't believe him, they wouldn't listen. And so the way he projects his voice and speaks with confidence is what makes people want to listen. Tip number 4 that makes Tate so influential, so articulate, so well spoken is his diverse use of analogies and stories. If you've ever listened to Tate talk ever, you will know that he brings up analogies and stories all the time, especially chess. And we as humans are fundamentally wired to love stories. From a young age, we were told stories in school, before bed, even in the hockey dressing room about how this one team did this and that. We've been at a young age, even every movie we watch is just one big story. We love stories. As a matter of fact, the best way for a human to retain information or to learn anything new is through a story. And so when somebody says once upon a time, you instantly get drawn in. Now, as you grow up, typically people don't say once upon a time, but what they do is they give analogies, or they say back in so and so. And when someone says back in 2022, or when I was in Romania, or when I went to, or when I was on this jet, or when I was with, it implies they're about to tell a story, which makes people want to listen. And his use of stories and analogies makes people really curious in what he has to say, because people love hearing stories. We are fundamentally wired to crave to listen to stories. People love listening to stories. It's why people watch movies all the time. People read fantasy books, etc. They love stories. And so his use of these makes him also illustrate points better, because when you tell a story, people can visualize it better than if you were just saying a bunch of words. And so also adds an illustration to what he's saying, to the point where you can picture these things. Tate, I walked into this club, and you're just imagining him walking into this club, which makes it more real to you, which makes the words and the story even better. Number 5 is his tonality. This goes right into number 3, which is vocal range. But if you listen to his tonality, it's not always the same. Right? Sometimes he'll speak in a bit of a lower pitch, sometimes in a higher pitch. It depends on what he's trying to get across. If he's talking to someone very, very, very seriously, he's not going to sit there and go, oh, yeah, I just did this. He's not going to talk like that. Right? But there's times when you've seen him talk like that if you've listened to him enough. And this is a great reflection of how he's able to change his tonality based on the situation. He understands the English language. He knows when to use upward inflections, when to use downward inflections, when to change the cadence of his speech, when not to. But he also understands there's more to just tonality, which I'll get into in number 7, which will come in a second. Okay. But number 6 is he's very calm. If you've ever seen him, he's almost emotionless when people are talking to. People can be, flaming him and throwing bad things his way and be saying bad about him. He will just sit there emotionless. And when he goes to answer, he doesn't jump on them and start screaming, getting all mad. He's very calm. And this is very offsetting to most people, because when people say something bad about you, most people just instantly reply. And so go, no, you said this, and you did that, and you did this. And then you get into an argument. But that doesn't reflect power. That shows weakness. And so when Tate is pressed by the BBC or by Piers Morgan, whoever it may be, he sits there calmly, waits for his turn to speak, and then he answers in a way which makes you almost wonder, why did that not faze him? Why did that not affect him? And that's what projects this confidence that Tate has that nobody else has, is because he has the ability to be so calm, so stoic in these certain situations. He sits there and thinks before he speaks. He doesn't just sit there and blab, well, they said this, and start letting his emotions get the best of him. He sits there and thinks. He's very calm, especially in these very high-pressure, intense scenarios. Which brings me to number 7, which is his body language. Arguably, something even more important than the words you say is how you say them and your body language, right? Communication is 20% what you say, 80% how you say it, which has a lot to do with how you present yourself. Which in this case may be your posture, but also his hand movements, his eye contact. If you watch when Tate speaks, you can just tell he has this aura around him that says, I am the man, you're going to listen to me. When you look at him speak, he's not sitting here like this. Yeah, and one time me and Tristan. No. Shoulders back, chest upright, right? Typically sitting with really good posture, right? With his body language open, which displays confidence. And when he speaks, he projects his voice, and he uses his hands to illustrate points. This is something a lot of people don't understand about communication, is that it's not just what you say or how you say it. It's also everything else, the nonverbal cues. Right? So moving your hands. It's something I try and cautiously and consciously do when I speak, is moving my hands more often. And it helps tell a story. What did this do? I don't know. But it shows confidence when you speak, and also adds more to what you're saying instead of just talking here like this. Imagine how boring it would be if the whole video was this. Yes, so today we went on a walk, and this guy did this, and that one that. Or I'll add some other effects in here as well, but today we went on a walk. We walked all the way up to the castle. When we got to the top of the castle, we realized we'd forgot the water. Anthony shouted back at the group and said, hey guys, can you get the water? They weren't even there. You notice how that story is way better than, we got to the top of the castle, Anthony said this, and he did that. That is the power of dynamic range, vocal range, and even just your hand movements. It can help illustrate a story to the point people want to listen to what you say. Now throw in some better vocabulary, and you're on your way to becoming a very well-spoken man. Now, the last thing, which I've saved the best for last, I promised you, is number 8, which is feedback. If you've ever watched any of Tate's courses where he explains how to become a better speaker, you'll know that he is very, and I mean very, diligent with how he speaks and learning to become a better speaker. He'll watch back his podcasts, his interviews, his courses. Anytime he's speaking, he'll watch it back to learn and figure, why did I say that? Why did I stutter here? Why did I pause there? And this is, I think, what makes him so far ahead of majority of other people, is he's actively trying to become a better speaker at all times. He's always watching back to ask himself, how can I improve? How can I get better? How can I get better? Even at this age, this day and age where he is a very exceptional speaker, he still will go back and watch interviews and podcasts and go, why did I say that? Why didn't I say this? What better terminology could I have used here? What could I improve in my vocabulary to make sure that when I speak, people are more likely to listen, or my words carry more weight? He will ask these questions, and he will try and actively get better, which is 90% of this entire thing. Is there's a lot of people who go through life who've spoken English for hundreds of years, quite literally, yet they still can't speak nearly to the degree at which Tate can, and that's because they have not actively tried to get better at speaking. So if there's one thing you take away from this, is if you want to become a better speaker, actively try and get better. Watch yourself speak, record yourself, listen to yourself. Try and find ways that you can get better. Monitor when you stutter, or when you say or when you ah. Start to add some pauses into your speech. Start to learn what good speech sounds like, which this is a great start if you are here. Learn when to pause, when not to pause. When to speak fast and when to speak really slow. When to speak in a higher pitch and when to speak in a bit of a lower pitch. Learn these things. Learn how to use your hands to tell stories. Learn different analogies. Learn these things and apply them. And then watch yourself back and ask, what could I have done better? And that is how you can learn to speak like Tate. And that is what I've been doing for the better part of the last 2 years, to learn to speak like Tate, so that when I speak, people listen. Now, if you're still here, I guess it's proof that this stuff works. Because you've listened to the entire video. Which means that all these tips I've just talked about, which I've actively tried to add into my life every single day, evidently work. Because you're still here listening to me. So apply these and practice, and you will get better. And if you want me to help you get better at speaking, or even making money, check the link down below. Other than that, have a great day.